Imagine a robber pulling off the biggest bank robbery in Japanese history without using force or inflicting harm on anyone. The operation was executed flawlessly. The heist was the best bank robbery operation, and even the investigation phase was spectacular. Make sure to watch the entire video. You won't regret it. The events of today's story took place in Japan in 1968. At the time, Japan witnessed a tremendous economic renaissance because of its leadership of the technological revolution in the world, which positively impacted banks. Consequently, banks were an excellent target for many robbers. Indeed, there were several bank robberies, but one of them was the greatest and smartest. The story began when the head manager of a local bank in Tokyo, named Nihon Trust Bank, received an anonymous letter in his house's mailbox. He was shocked when he opened the letter. It was a threat from an unknown in which he asked the bank manager to bring 300 million yen to a particular location. Otherwise, an explosive would be set off at his house. The bank manager got scared once he read the letter, and he immediately informed the police. And then he figured out that there was a similar letter in his office. Eventually, letters with the same content kept coming frequently to his house and office. The police put the bank and the manager's house under surveillance in case the unknown guy tried to carry out his threat. The bank manager informed the bank employees about the threat and asked them to be prepared for any danger in the upcoming days. A few days after receiving the threatening letters, exactly on the 10th of December 1968, the bank had to deliver a great sum of money worth 300 million yen to Toshiba, a well-known tech company that has a large number of employees. It was the end of the year. This was the time of distributing bonuses. The company used to give the bonuses cash, and the Nihon Trust Bank was the responsible of delivering the cash to one of the company's branches in Tokyo. The bank manager appointed 4 employees to transfer the money. The 4 bankers put the money in 3 large suitcases, loaded them into the car's trunk, and drove off to the company, which was only a few kilometers away. On their way to the company, a policeman on a motorcycle pulled the car over, came to the bankers, and told them that their boss's house had been attacked and exploded, leaving behind injuries and even deaths. The bankers immediately thought that the unknown guy carried out his threat and exploded the manager's house despite the police's surveillance. The policeman also told them that it is suspected that the unknown guy put explosives in the bank and probably in the bank's cars, and he asked them to search the inside. While the bankers were frantically searching the interior of the car, the policeman looked down to check the underside. All of a sudden, sparks and smoke started coming from under the car. The bankers realized that this was the bomb, and it was about to be exploded. Then they immediately jumped out of the car and made a distance and hid behind a wall. A few moments later, the bankers took a look from behind the wall, and they were surprised. Both the car and the policeman had vanished, and all that was left on the ground was the motorcycle and a flare. The bankers didn't know what was happening. At first, they thought that the brave policeman had taken the car to a safe place so as not to explode on them. They immediately called the bank, and the bank manager responded. They were relieved when they knew that he was still alive, and that there was no bomb in his house nor in the bank, and everything was all right. At the time, they realized that the spark and the smoke were not coming from the car, but from a flare that had been placed on the ground. They realized that the policeman who was pretending to be a lifesaver was a robber. He made them believe that there was a bomb in the car, and when they ran away, he took the car with the 300 million yen in it, the same sum of money requested by the unknown guy in the threatening letters. This operation today is considered the largest and smartest bank robbery in Japan. The police were notified, and officers came to the crime scene where they managed to get many proofs left by the robber, the most important of which was the motorcycle. It wasn't a legitimate police motorcycle. It was a well-customized one to look similar to the real one. In addition to the banker's description of the robber, they claimed that he was wearing a uniform just like a real cop. The robber had meticulously planned the heist and executed it flawlessly, leaving the bankers in a state of shock and disbelief. Despite their efforts to recall any distinguishing features, they were unable to provide any useful information to the authorities. The authorities took the theft seriously because of the amount of money that was stolen. They deployed over 10,000 officers throughout the city, setting up checkpoints on each major street in Tokyo. Since the bank car had a black interior, they were instructed to check on every vehicle with a black interior. It didn't take long for the police to locate the car abandoned near a cemetery, not far from the scene of the crime, with recent tire tracks all around it. The police realized at the time that the robber had changed vehicles, so they gave new orders to stop and search every single car that passed through the checkpoints. The orders took a while to be transmitted to the officers, giving the robber a chance to pass through the roadblock without any problems. The incident made the front page of every major newspaper the next morning. Everyone was astounded by the amount of money taken as well as the heist's meticulous planning and execution. Many people were even impressed by the man's intelligence for being able to steal such a large sum of money without causing any harm. Despite the fact that the robber left behind numerous proofs, including the motorcycle, the police were unable to locate anything specific that would be of assistance. All of their efforts to find the motorcycle and how he customized it, as well as the source of the uniform and flare, proved fruitless because everything used in this operation was stolen. Based on the banker's descriptions, they also attempted to create a similar image of the robber, which was printed more than 750,000 times and distributed all over Japan. The investigation lasted for many years, and statistics show that it was the largest investigation in Japan's history. Imagine that there were 110,000 suspects, 170,000 or more officers were involved in the investigation, and the investigation cost 900 million yen, double the amount of the theft spent on the investigation. The question is, why did the government decide to spend this much money searching for a smaller amount? The fact is that their main goal was to demonstrate their presence and the effectiveness of their security system in order to deter future robberies rather than to get the money back. During the investigations, there were several main suspects. We are going to focus on 3 of them because of their weird and interesting stories. The first defendant is actually the manager of the bank himself. The police did not charge him directly, but there were several rumors among people that the manager was the mastermind. And the reason they thought about this hypothesis is that the money transfer operation is supposed to be a secret operation that no one knows about except the manager, the employees who transfer the money, and officials from the company that will receive it. As it is noticed, the car was not escorted by any guards during the delivery process, despite the huge amount of money it was transporting. So how did an outsider know about it? Moreover, the threatening messages that were continuously received at the manager's house and office, despite police surveillance of the house and bank, no one was able to trace them or know their source. So how did these messages continue to arrive? All these questions put the bank manager in the dock by the people, but the police did not consider him a suspect because there was no conclusive evidence. The second defendant has a tragic story. This defendant, Takina Shoji, was working as a taxi driver. The reason for the accusation is that he lives in a place near the bank and that his shape resembles the image created by the police. In addition to his driving skills as a taxi driver, this gave him a stronger impression as a defendant. But the police did not find any evidence against him, so they did not arrest him. But during the investigations, information was leaked to the media that this person was one of the accused, and as soon as they heard the news, most journalists wrote articles about him and published his name and photo. So all the newspapers started circulating the story of this man claiming that he is the robber without any evidence. All of the accusations were based on his appearance, which looked like the one created by the police, and the fact that he lived not far from the bank. After the man's name was published in the media, the police decided to arrest him and interrogate him more deeply to please the media and public opinion. After questioning him, the police discovered that this driver had an excuse that proved his absence during the commission of the crime. It is impossible that he was the robber. And then they released him. Unfortunately, this man's reputation suffered greatly after his name and picture appeared in all the newspapers, to the point where he quit his job, and all of his friends and family abandoned him overnight. Despite the fact that he was innocent, he eventually developed depression and committed suicide. The third defendant was the strongest of all the suspects. This defendant was actually a young 19-year-old named Sato Yoshiro. This young man belonged to a local gang, and at the same time, his father was a policeman. This young man was previously arrested for car theft. What has not been mentioned before is that during the investigations, the police discovered that the thief changed the car more than once, and several cars were found used by the thief, and they were all stolen cars. The young man also had excellent skills in driving motorcycles. In addition to his features that resemble the image created by the police, he did not have any argument to prove his absence at the time of the crime, in addition to the fact that his father was a policeman and he had a motorcycle, so it was easy for him to know its details and imitate it. All these facts confirmed and proved the accusation against this young man. But hours before his arrest, news came in that this young man had committed suicide at his house by ingesting cyanide. The police came to the conclusion that the young boy decided to kill himself after knowing that he is going to be arrested. At the same time, the police found neither the money nor evidence that confirmed this boy is the robber. There were several theories, one of which was that the father might have poisoned the young boy so as not to bring shame upon him as a policeman. Another theory claims that the father is the mastermind. He killed his son and hid the money so as not to be exposed. The third theory, which is more believable, is that the whole gang participated in this operation, and then they killed the boy since his father is a policeman, which might cause them some trouble. The biggest evidence of this is that some of the gang members bought houses and cars after the operation. One of them was arrested years later, and the police discovered that he had a huge sum of cash in his possession, and when they asked him about its source, he refused to answer. There is a high probability that this is part of the stolen amount, and all of the gang members participated in the operation, and they decided to get rid of Seto Yoshiro because he was under the police's radar. And since his father is a policeman, things may get even more complicated. There is no conclusive evidence to prove the validity of this theory, but it remains the closest to the truth, and Seto Yoshiro is still considered the prime suspect. The investigations continued for 7 years later, in December 1975, when the police declared the end of investigations in this case without being solved. 20 years later, in 1988, according to Japanese law, the thief was exempted from any criminal control, meaning that he can reveal his identity without being arrested or punished. But to this day, the robber has not revealed his identity, and this case remains unsolved.